I'm Daniel, the past life regressionist, and it's time to begin.
Lift off and the clock has started.
3, 2, 1. This is Timeless Spirituality. Enjoy Eternity Time.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Timeless Spirituality. For this episode, I want to give you guys another 2025 prediction episode. I know that we're, a month into 2025 at this point, but I went ahead and listened to my friend Christine Rodriguez's, her 2025 predictions from her podcast, and I'm like, can I put that on mine, Christine? I thought that was great, and I think it really gives a more well-rounded picture to all 2025, in addition to what I've already done on here with NJ in the prediction episode that we did. So Christine said, yeah, go for it. One thing I do want to point out, though, you guys have heard Christine on the podcast a few times before, and we always talk about the difference between Vedic and Western astrology. So I just want to make it really clear that these predictions are going to be done using the Vedic system. So that is slightly different from Western. So she may be talking about planets that you guys are familiar with, but in different signs than what you're familiar with right now, because Vedic is more astronomically accurate than Western is. And this is coming from someone who practices Western. But I think that there is truth in all of these systems. And just remember, it's Vedic, not Western. And I hope you guys enjoy this episode. And with all that said, if you would like to book a regression with me to discover who, when, and where you have been throughout time, you can reach me on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist or my website, thepastliferegressionist.com. And now, it's time to begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to AstrologyNow podcast. My name is Christine Rodriguez, and I hope that all of you had an amazing new year. I hope that you took time to reflect on and process the year of 2024, and I hope that you're feeling so clear and directed as you move into your year of 2025. Now, I do want to say that if I took all of the transits for 2025 and I spoke about everything that I anticipate to happen globally and how to best utilize the energy in a personal way, it would take me hours, which is why I decided to teach a class, which I'm hosting on January 18th, where we go over all of the main transits of 2025, what I anticipate is going to happen globally, and how we can best utilize the energy to our advantage. I also do a month-to-month analysis. So if you listen to this podcast and you find that you're wanting more, if you're really wanting to feel completely confident moving forward into 2025 ahead of time, I do recommend taking that class. You can sign up at innerknowing.yoga, click on offerings, and you'll see the 2025 workshop. And while I'm at it, I also want to announce that I am scheduling calls for the Inner Knowing Vedic coaching program. If you are wanting to learn more about my coaching program, same thing, go to my website. It's under offerings, and then you'll just click to schedule a discovery call. I took 2024 off of the coaching program. I've been back and forth between states, living in a van, moving. It was just a lot. And I really did, when I created the program, I poured my heart and soul into it. And I've taken a lot, not everything, but a lot of what I've learned through my time practicing mindfulness and meditation and yoga, Ayurveda, and astrology, and I put it into a program that is designed to support people in building a life of meaning and clarity. And I absolutely love teaching it. Every single time I've ran it, I've just had such an amazing time, and I can't wait to run it again and meet the next cohort. So if you are interested, I would absolutely love to talk to you about it. A new year. It feels like a fresh start for sure. So before I start talking about the transits, please remember that this podcast uses the Vedic sidereal system of astrology, not the Western tropical system. So this year of 2025, I think is going to end on a high note. So I just want to say that in advance. I think that we have a lot to look forward to at the end of 2025. And I think that we have still a lot of intensity to get through in the beginning and middle of 2025. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of lay that out there. Now, when we are discussing transits, we're talking about the planets in motion. We're talking about how the current astrological stage is going to influence the world at large. Our natal birth chart, right? If you calculate your birth chart, you see a snapshot of the sky at the moment of your birth. You came out of the birth canal, you took your first inhalation of prana, or that vital life force energy, and you were connected to this material reality. It animated your life, and your birth chart was created upon that first inhalation. Now, the transits are how the astral bodies, as they move through space, influence us. And we can read those transits against your birth chart, and we can also read those transits for global affairs. Okay, and that's usually when we do things like compare the astrology to the USA chart, compare the astrology to the US leaders chart, or the chart of New Zealand or Russia, or whatever it is that we're trying to look at, because it's very helpful to have a chart to compare things to. With research, we can figure out how astrological events are going to impact us, but it's very, very helpful to have a birth chart to compare things to. So when we're doing global events and we're trying to predict things for the world, yeah, we want to look at Putin, we want to look at Donald Trump, we want to look at the USA, we want to look at China. All of that is super helpful. And so when we're understanding transits, it's super helpful to understand how fast the planets move, because the slower the moving planet, the more of an impact it's going to have on us as a collective. It's going to influence current events, trends, culture, fashion, the types of music that's popular, the types of movies that come out. It has an influence on, again, the collective consciousness, the slower the moving of the planet. And so the outer planets like Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus, they really have a huge impact. I mean, if you've been following Astrology Now, we've been discussing that the United States is going through a Pluto return. Okay, in 1776, when we had the Constitution written, Pluto was at 6 degrees of Capricorn, and for all of 2024, Pluto was passing that degree line as it passed 6 degrees and then went retrograde and then passed again. And this is a death and rebirth of the United States. It is a time where we're questioning the core values of the country, what needs to be changed, what needs to be upheld. And the systems are changing. The government is changing. That's what Capricorn is. Capricorn is the government. It's the economy, it's currency. And then, of course, we saw with Uranus. Uranus was in Aries. It finally moved into Taurus. As soon as it moved into Taurus, Taurus has to do with food. It also has to do with the economy. But we saw so much come up with food, nutrition. What are the additives? What are the preservatives? What's healthy? What's not? What's food and what's not? What have we been eating? That is the Uranus in Taurus. And then a couple of years ago, we had Neptune, of course, move into Pisces, which we're going to continue talking about today. So those are the outer planets. Then we have Saturn. Saturn is the planet of karma. And remember, in traditional Vedic astrology, we have the 9 planets. We have Rahu and Ketu, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, Mercury, the sun, and the moon. And so if we're only looking at those 9 planets, the moon stays in a sign for 2.5 days. So it's very quick. The moon is a trigger for events to happen, as opposed to setting the stage of what's going to occur, which are the slower moving planets. We have the sun, who stays in a sign for a month continuously. We have Mercury and Venus, which also stay in a sign for a month, but of course they'll go retrograde. Mars stays in a sign for 2 months. Jupiter stays in a sign for a year. Saturn stays in a sign for 2.5 years, and then the karmic nodes stay in a sign for 18 months. And so in the traditional Vedic context, the social planets, the planets that really impact the collective, are Jupiter and Saturn. They only transit a sign once a year, every 2.5 years. And then, of course, the karmic nodes are literally the nodes of karma. They're responsible for the eclipses, these fated events in time, these pathways, doors of change and opportunity. That's what I think about when I think of the eclipses. They occur because of the karmic nodes every 18 months. So I'm really trying to paint this picture that the planets, according to the traditional Vedic system, that really have, a heavy hitting effect on us all, they are all changing signs in 2025 within months. So spring of 2025 is going to be this portal of change. And I have to say, as we move through spring and summer, I just think so many incredible events are going to occur on the positive side and on the negative side, which we're going to discuss. But I'm just trying to really put on your radar that 2025, it's palpable, it's visceral. We're going to feel it. And if you have been thinking about having a reading with me or a different astrologer, this is the year. Because as those planets change signs, all of us listening, there's going to be an area of our life that gets affected. Saturn, for a Cancer ascendant, Saturn is going to shift into the 9th house of Dharma, spirituality, the father. If you are a Leo ascendant, Saturn is going to transit the 8th house of death and rebirth, of transformation. So depending on your birth chart, Saturn is going to influence a different house. But guess what? We also get to do that with Jupiter and Rahu and Ketu. So there's going to be a lot of shift happening. Now, for a global perspective, again, there's going to be quite a shift that we're witnessing, and we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about it today. So let me go ahead and pull up my notes here, and we will get into talking about these transits. You may hear kind of like computer noises because I'm clicking around a little bit. So let's go ahead and start with Saturn in the sign of Pisces. So we'll talk about the main planetary events. I want to talk about Saturn in Pisces. I want to talk about Rahu in Aquarius, Ketu in Leo. We'll talk about Jupiter in Gemini and briefly exalted in the sign of Cancer. And I also want to talk about the eclipses a little bit and this conjunction that we're having later in the year with Mars and Ketu. So Mars and Ketu are going to join forces in the sign of Leo for 2 months. This is a very, very, very intense combination, which we will spend time talking about. So talking about Saturn. Saturn has been in Aquarius. It peeked its head in 2022. It retrograded back out, and then Saturn came to stay in Aquarius at the beginning of 2023. So Saturn, again, stays in the sign for about 2.5 years. Now Saturn is moving into the sign of Pisces from March 29th of 2025 until February 23rd of 2028. And so if you are a Capricorn moon, you are going to be out of Sati Sati on March 29th. I encourage you, this is a time for a party. This is the conclusion of a 7.5-year period. If you've known that you've been in it, if you haven't, grab some friends, get dressed up, go out, celebrate in a way that feels appropriate for you. If you are an Aries moon, this is your initiation into a 7.5-year journey. Have a takeoff party. Have a party to celebrate the beginning of the 7.5-year trek. You are going to totally transform. But anyway, so part of the significance of Saturn in Pisces is that Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. It has to do with conclusions, the turning of a chapter. Pisces is a sign of spirituality. It's the liminal space between the material world and the spiritual world. It's incredibly ethereal, and it's also incredibly intense. And when I've done research on this, I'm going to do a full podcast on all of the research come March, but just a little bit in advance. Some of the things that I've seen consistent with Saturn and Pisces is, first of all, civil rights and humanitarian efforts. We've seen so many scientific advancements with Saturn and Pisces. This is when Dolly the sheep was cloned. It was the first adult cloned animal. The first GMO tomato was sold in Britain. DNA was created in a test tube. Now, we've also seen things like drug overdoses. Pisces is wanting to escape the material reality, okay? And so that can show up as drug addicts, someone who is trying to alter their consciousness, but it can also indicate meditating and trying to transcend. You know, Saturn is a planet that brings structure and organization to things, and Pisces is about spirituality. So there could very well be a focus on spiritual groups or religious groups. I certainly see there being more spirituality. I think this is going to be a year where so many more people are taking interest in things like tarot and astrology and finding meaning. But you know, when looking back, I was also seeing an interest in more odd of groups. I was seeing Heaven's Gate cult suicides, stuff with Charles Manson. Pisces is the number 12, which is hidden enemies. We saw things like the Zodiac Killer. We actually saw a lot of murders during the Saturn and Pisces. I don't mean to freak y'all out. That's just what happened. The overdoses, you know, this is when Chris Farley overdosed. Jagged Little Pill by Alanis Morissette came out. And germ warfare. And listen, this is very, very strange. I was noticing this. There was a time in January of 1967 where germ warfare was being done, like biological warfare. And we are having a relatively similar combination happen this year in summer. And so I don't know what's going to happen, but there may be some type of virus or, again, germ warfare, biological warfare. I wanted to point that out with Saturn and Pisces. These were consistencies that I saw. I think we're going to see so many new futuristic technological innovations. We are having like 4 transits that would indicate technological breakthroughs. And so I think that 2025 is like a year of the future. I think we're going to have so much more involving space exploration, maybe even innovations with travel. There's going to be so much of this, and medicine when it comes to medical advancements. I believe the first heart transplant was done with Saturn and Pisces, actually. So new medical advancements, a focus on natural remedies, herbalism, psychedelics as medicine, we are going to see blow up in this 2.5-year period. Now, Saturn in Pisces, it means that Saturn is going to be with Neptune. Saturn will be conjoined Neptune for the entire cycle. Neptune is water. It also has an association to oil and gas. Saturn has an association to oil and gas. I think that there may be, unfortunately, some disasters. I hope that this isn't true, but we may have like oil spills. We may have explosions due to oil. There may be just some catastrophes involving oil, maybe even water contamination. I also think that we are going to be looking at new ways to use oil and gas as resources. I think that water as a resource is going to become a topic, a very important topic. And I also think that we're going to be talking more about renewable resources. I saw recently this really cool charging station open where it's like people can park and they get snacks and they can hang out and charge their computer. I think that we're going to see more charging stations start popping up around also for electrical vehicles. So that's a little bit about Saturn and Neptune together. Let me check out my notes to see if there's anything else that I wrote. I mean, these are 2 fundamentally different energies. If we look at the energy of Saturn, it has to do with practicality. It has to do with being realistic, being steady. Neptune is whimsical and illusionary. It's what is not real but appears real, whereas Saturn is nothing but reality. And so I think there's going to be energy at odds here. I think it's going to feel difficult to ascertain the truth. Now, I think that people are going to be very, very dedicated, right? Saturn has to do with commitment and dedication. And so I think that people are going to be feeling very dedicated to getting to the bottom of things and to finding the truth. And perhaps there's just a lot more than we previously knew. Maybe there's a lot more hidden information, or there's a lot more corruption that we even expected. But I do think, even on a personal level, we need to be careful because we may be looking at things through rose-colored glasses, or we may be vacillating between idealism and practicality. And so my quick advice on a personal level, which we'll talk more about this in my class, but my advice is going in with the invitation to see things with lightness and to view the world with romanticism, but take a healthy dose of practicality as well. I really do think that it's possible to balance the two. So we want to be real with ourselves, we want to be honest with ourselves, but we also want to invite in this beautiful capacity to see the world through a romantic lens, which is Neptune. So that is Saturn in Pisces. I also want to say that between March 29th and May 29th, we're going to have a combination of Rahu and Saturn. This is deadly, literally. This is when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. This is when Robert Kennedy was assassinated. We were having so many riots around the world. We were having people protesting for peace. This was such an intense period of time. So on a global level, I am very concerned, March 29th to May 29th, that there are going to be assassination attempts. I'm concerned that there are going to be attacks. And remember that Pisces is the final sign. Two of the nakshatras in Pisces are the Vajrapadas, which are the funeral pyre. The funeral cot, I should say, moving towards the funeral pyre. It has to do with endings. And so that period of time, we're going to talk about a little bit more because I want to talk about the eclipses, but we can anticipate some major intensity. Now I want to see if I took any other notes here. Rahu and Saturn are both Vayu. They both have to do with wind. And so there could be some type of issue involving wind. Of course, there could be also issues involving oil, which I've mentioned before. Another note that I made here is that Rahu and Saturn in some people's charts can actually be very expansive. And I was doing research on this the other day on a certain transit. I was noticing that for one of my friends, Rahu and Saturn brought a significant breakup that was just crippling for them. And then for another friend around the same time, they met their life partner. So it's like, for all of us, this is going to be different. On a global level, I think it's going to be intense. For us on a personal level, Rahu expands things. So it's going to expand whatever Saturn is in our birth chart. So for a lot of us, this could actually indicate a time of growth and opportunity. So don't let it scare you too much. It's very chart dependent. If you have planets around 2 degrees of Pisces, this is certainly going to influence you a lot more. So keep that in mind. It's definitely a time where that Saturn-Rahu action is going to influence you. 2 degrees of Pisces, that's where they're going to conjoin. Now let's talk about Rahu in Aquarius and Ketu in Leo. Of course, if you have planets in Aquarius, if you have planets in Ketu, this is going to influence you more. Rahu and Ketu are going to be in Aquarius and Leo from May 29th of 2025 until November 25th of 2026. Now, just looking at what the planets represent and what the signs represent, Rahu is futuristic and it's very pioneering. Aquarius is humanity. It has to do with the collective. It is also incredibly scientifically oriented. Aquarius has to do with the future, breaking boundaries. It has to do with seeing outside of the box. Aquarius hates to conform. It wants to take whatever was, it wants to reconstruct it and make it better for everyone. Aquarius hates being confined. Rahu does so well in this energy. And so again, Saturn in Pisces is great for science and technology. Rahu in Aquarius is incredible for science and technology. Some of the things that have happened with Rahu in Aquarius, the iPhone was introduced. It was when the first man landed on the moon. We've isolated a single gene for the first time. Now, also, what I saw when I was doing research on this is that many constitutions were created and revised. It's very power to the people energy, kind of a continuation of that Saturn in Aquarius. You know, Rahu and Saturn act very similarly. We just had Saturn in Aquarius for the last couple of years. Now Rahu's entering Aquarius. So very much continuing this energy of like, you know, power to the people. We had, again, more constitutions created. We had many revolts and revolutions. And what I also saw that I thought was so interesting, Leo has to do with the kingdom. And it has to do with like a monarchy. When we think of Leo, it's like the king on a throne. It has to do with lineage. It specifically has to do with the paternal line. Now, Ketu has to do with the taboo. It has to do with almost like the underdog. And it likes to change and separate things. As Ketu moves through Leo, I saw so much with female empowerment. It's almost like changing this male lineage. The first female to ever be democratically elected happened when Ketu was in Leo. We had the first woman elected as a leader in a Muslim majority country. We also had Queen Elizabeth become the queen. It was when her father died and she immediately became the queen. All of this happened when Ketu was in Leo. And so I know it kind of sounds surprising because we kind of had this opportunity to have a female president. Obviously, that did not happen. I still think that as we move into 2025, there is going to be a lot, 2025 and 2026, I think that we're going to see a lot of focus on shifting maybe even kingdoms. There may be kingdoms around the world that are shifting. What we perceive as a leader may be changing. And I think that there are going to be many opportunities for women to step into the position of power. So I think that that's pretty exciting. So really with the Rahu and Aquarius, Ketu and Leo, that's what I'm seeing. And that shift again is going to happen in May. Final time I'll say this, if you're a Leo or an Aquarius, it's definitely going to influence you more than the other signs. Then we have Jupiter in Gemini. So Jupiter is going to move out of Taurus, which, you know, Jupiter has been in Taurus since May of 2024. It's going to enter Gemini on May 14th of 2025. As we were talking about earlier, Taurus has to do with food. And Jupiter has to do with the truth. So I believe that this combination of Uranus and Jupiter is part of why we're seeing so much come out about food and natural remedies and this kind of turn towards functional medicine and honestly kind of like exposure of big pharma, big food, big insurance, how it all works together. We even saw the incredibly unfortunate assassination of the health insurance CEO, Brian Thompson. So it's like all of this focus on health and healthcare. And I believe that it's a combination. I believe it's a combination of Uranus and Jupiter and Taurus, and then even Neptune and Pisces is contributing to it, and Ketu, of course, in Virgo. So there were a few different things that led up to this, but I do believe that Jupiter and Taurus contributed. Now Jupiter is preparing to enter Gemini in May. Jupiter will stay in Gemini from May 14th until October 18th. It's going to retrograde back into Cancer. Then it's going to move back into Gemini again on December 4th. Jupiter in Gemini. Jupiter in Gemini is complicated. First of all, Gemini has to do with travel. It has to do with technological innovation. It's the third indicator of this. It has to do with social media and communications. Gemini is also often associated to illness. I want to be really clear about that. When Jupiter has been in Gemini, we've seen things like Ebola outbreaks. We've seen things resurface. We've seen viruses resurface and illnesses resurface. Mercury has to do with cellular reproduction. And Gemini, again, it's often associated to disease. Honestly, even Neptune is associated to disease, and we're having Saturn with Neptune. So there may be some viruses pop up during this cycle of Jupiter and Gemini. I also think we're going to have advances in social media. I think there are going to be changes in how things are organized, how things are done. Even in the United States birth chart, Rahu is going to be transiting the third house of communication. So there may be more of this focus on like TikTok. Is TikTok legal? What is AI's placement in social media? What should we be allowed to post? Should teenagers be allowed to use social media? I think it's going to bring up a lot of these types of conversations. Jupiter was in Gemini during pretty complex periods of time, including when 9/11 happened. Now, do I think that 9/11 is going to happen again? Not necessarily, but I do anticipate intensity, and particularly around illness and disease, and then attacks, and maybe even issues with transportation. When I was looking at this with Jupiter and Gemini, it's surprising. There were a lot more car accidents, bus accidents, plane accidents, things like that. So those are the negative things to watch out for. On the positive end, I do think that we'll have innovations with travel, innovations with technology, and again, maybe even innovations with social media, maybe even a new social media platform. Who knows? Now, also journalists. I think there's going to be a big focus on journalism, writers, publishers. This is Gemini. Jupiter in Cancer, I actually see as being very positive. Of course, Jupiter is only going to poke its head into Cancer for a few months because Jupiter is going to move into Cancer from October 18th until December 4th, and then it will come back in spring of 2026. Jupiter is the great benefic. It offers abundance, grace, it gives opportunities, and it is exalted in Cancer. It just becomes even more benevolent. And so I think on a global scale, when Jupiter is in Cancer, that's going to be a time of relief. And Jupiter is even aspecting Saturn and Neptune at that period. So I see that as being very positive. So I suppose the one thing I can say about that is that Jupiter can contribute to inflation. It can create kind of like this expanded energy. And so maybe, again, like inflation is on the rise. But overall, I do see there being a sense of relief. A few things to consider. Jupiter is not going to influence all of our charts the same, right? Depending on our birth chart, Jupiter in Cancer is going to bring about a different effect. And for the United States, it is governed by Jupiter. The United States birth chart is a Sagittarius rising, so the first house ruler will be exalted in the 8th. And so though I think there's going to be this sense of relief, there still may be this edge of transformation for the United States. So Uranus in Taurus, Uranus retrograded back into Aries. It's going to move back into Taurus from June 1st, or excuse me, Uranus was in Taurus from June 1st of 2024 until December 12th of 2024. It's going to move back into Taurus in March of 2025 until July 6th of 2031. Can we give March a break? Like, I feel like everything is happening in March and May. So in March, Saturn is going to move into Pisces. We have Uranus moving back into Taurus. This is very intense, y'all. March is going to be such an intense month. I think that there's going to be this continued focus between March 19th of 2025 and July 6th of 2031 on food and market prices. I see there being a focus on currencies, gold backing when it comes to investing in gold and silver, when it comes to our currency and economy, and then also like the value of our currency. There's going to be ups and downs in the stock market. I totally see there being a lot of focus on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Now, the big part about this that I want to say is that when Uranus is in Taurus, every single time since 1776, every single time, the USA has been involved in a war. So I'm just throwing that out there. We have not had a single cycle of this transit without being involved in a war. So I see that as being very, very significant. So those are the main transits for 2025. I do just want to point out a few more things. And again, if you take the class, I mean, I have so much information here, hours. It's marked at 2.5 hours, and I'm going to send an email to people. I think we're going to have to go a little bit longer than that. But in January, on January 20th, which is Inauguration Day, Mars is going to shift back into Gemini. January, Uranus is also going to direct at 29 degrees of Aries and Kritika. This is a very, very intense portion of the sky. Sudden shocking events, maybe even calamities. There could be natural disasters. So mark January 20th on your calendar. On the positive end of January, what I like about January is that Venus is going to enter Pisces. Venus is going to be in Pisces from January 27th until May 31st because Venus is going to retrograde, which we'll talk about. But I could see this as being a very romantic period, a very creative period. It could bring a lot of opportunity to make things more beautiful, to experience more beauty in your life, to enhance the world around you, and even to enhance relationships potentially. But I do think on a global level, I think there's going to be some drama. I've been, thinking about that. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm here in Las Vegas, and my partner and I, he just got back from out of town, and he travels a lot for work, so it's always really nice when he's home. But we were rock climbing together, and we heard this loud bang. And I was like, oh, we still have fireworks going. We didn't hear any others. I was like, that's so odd. And then we get home, and we realized that there had been the terrorist. I think that they're involving it. I think that they are considering it a terrorist, but there was a explosion in front of the Trump Tower. And so we're already kind of seeing this energy culminate. I don't know if there's going to be a riot or a protest. I'm not completely sure what it's going to be, but I do anticipate there being some drama around the time of inauguration. And so we'll see about that. I could be wrong, but it's Mars moving back into Gemini at the same time that Uranus is going direct. So the other transit that I would like to mention is that Venus is going to retrograde. And so let's see. Venus is going to retrograde between March 1st and April 12th. We'll have an entire podcast on this, but just kind of know Venus doesn't retrograde very often at all. When Venus retrogrades, it's a time of relationship issues coming up. It's a time of focusing on our patterns in love and romance. It could be a time of relationship issues coming up from the past, maybe even exes or past life relationships. So that's March 1st until April 12th. We are also going to begin our eclipse season in March. We have a total lunar eclipse at 29 degrees of Uttara Phalguni between March 13th and 14th. And then we have a solar eclipse on March 29th. Remember March 29th? I don't know what's up with 29, but March 29th is the same day that Saturn moves into Pisces. It's, it's between the Bhadrapadas. It's an Uttara Bhadrapada, which has to do with the funeral cot. And so I anticipate that there is going to be a turning point for the collective potentially. I think that for us on a spiritual quest, I think it's fantastic for spiritual realization and meditation. I think it's really good for inner seeking or doing counseling or therapy. But on a global level, I think that there could unfortunately be some type of an attack or something radical happening, something extreme happening. Historically, this day has been associated to death. So there could be a metaphorical death. There could be a literal death. Be watching. Okay, March is one of the more intense months in 2025. So let's see. April, we'll talk about in the class. I'm kind of going through here and seeing what else. Okay, so this is the other one I wanted to talk about, this Mars and Ketu combination in Leo. Mars and Ketu are going to be conjunct from June 6th through June 28th, and they're completely conjunct between July 20th and July 22nd. This, remember we talked about Leo being the kingdom, and Mars and Ketu create separation. It can also create expansion, to be honest, but it's, Ketu acts a lot like Mars. And when Mars and Ketu are together, it can create explosive events. Very, very, very intense events. I think this is going to be an extremely challenging time for world leaders. I think that people may be acting more extreme. There may be more explosive events happening. Now, that is on a global level. Trying to be optimistic or positive here, with Mars and Ketu together, it could be a time of feeling an uptick of energy. We may be feeling more motivated, more inspired. We may even feel more athletically inclined. It is in the sign of Leo. It's an excellent time to step into leadership positions, to take charge, to stand out. So there are definitely positive energies here for us to tangibly work with. I just think that on a global level, mark June and July on your calendars. So for the rest of the year, really what I would talk about is that Jupiter in Cancer. And so Jupiter in Cancer will be October 18th until December 4th. And I think that this is just going to be a time where maybe the markets stabilize. There's relief in the stock market. There may be support in the housing market. I think that for us on a global level, when it comes to abundance, it's going to feel just a lot easier and straightforward. And for us on a personal level, especially if we have planets in water signs, it means that Jupiter is going to be aspecting those signs. I think that we may be getting opportunities. We may be experiencing more grace, more unexpected miracles. I just think that's going to be a really beautiful, sweet time that will continue in spring of 2026. And so I know that we just went through and a lot of it sounded negative, and I don't intend it to sound negative. I really do think that between the eclipses, right, of March and when all of the planets are changing signs, I think it's going to be a turning point truly. And I think that very intense events are going to be happening. Maybe even violence, again, dramatic endings. I think that January around inauguration is going to be a period of intensity. I think that June and July will be as well. And so I just think that we're kind of moving through this period of turbulence. And as we move through this period, there's going to be a lot of sweetness on the other side. I think that things to say on the positive front are going to be the incredible technological advancements. I just think truly, I think that 2025 is like the year of the future. That's how I think of it. We have had incredible scientific breakthroughs, both in Saturn and Pisces and with Rahu in Aquarius, and, even with Jupiter and Gemini. All of these are emphasizing technology. And so just for future podcasts to come, I want to say that, first of all, for the 2025 class, I have every single month mapped out with every single main transit. But aside from that, I will be continuing our monthly horoscopes. So we'll go through and we'll continue going month by month. And when we get to spring, I will share the research that I found for each of the signs, because I know some of y'all enjoy that, and I just think it is so fun to do. So I'll be sharing more and more as time goes on, but I wanted to mark the most important dates for you. And so just kind of mapping it out for you all in case you want the dates written down. Saturn in Pisces is March 29th of 2025 through February 23rd of 2028. Rahu is in Aquarius and Ketu is in Leo from May 29th of 2025 through November 25th of 2026. Jupiter is in Gemini from May 14th of 2025 through October 18th, and then again from December 4th until June 1st of 2026. Jupiter will be in Cancer from October 18th through December 4th of 2025. And then Uranus is going to be in Taurus from June 1st of 2024, really March 19th of 2025 through June 6th of 2031. And then the eclipses for the year are March 13th and 14th. March, which it just depends on where you are. So March 13th, 14th, March 29th, September 7th, September 21st. And then that combination of Mars and Ketu will be June 6th through July 28th. So that is what I have for you all. I really do hope it's helpful. I know that it's a ton of information, but I'm really looking forward to continuing to keep you all updated as we move through the months of 2025. I will be talking about these and elaborating as the months move on. But again, if you want all of that in advance, if you want to hear it all loud and clear, well in advance for your year to come, definitely check out my class. I would love to see you there. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, it's AstrologyNow_podcast. My Patreon is patreon.com/AstrologyNowPodcast, where I do weekly horoscopes. And my website, of course, is innerknowing.yoga. Again, my name is Christine Rodriguez. This is Astrology Now. Thank you so much.
Fellow time travelers, your journey through time awaits you. Just want to thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. And if you're interested in discovering who, when, and where you have been throughout time, and you'd like to book a session with me, just go ahead and send me a message on Instagram at The Past Life Regressionist, or you can reach me through my website, yourpastliferegressionist.com.